Fletcher, he does intend to be here.
Okay. Done. Complete.
Okay, moving on to the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes, amendments? All right, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
How about a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. So we've got a series of updates for you. First thing this morning, and we're going to move quickly through them to make sure we have time for the other items. First up is the Asheville Downtown Association. We have two big events coming up. So the Building Our City with Kimber Lanning will be our first speaker series of the year. Can you hear?
Not very well.
How about everybody else? Can you hear me okay? That's better? Okay, so the February 13th, next Wednesday, we have a speaker series, our first one of the year. It will be with Kimber Lanning. She is the Executive Director of Local First Arizona, which is a statewide organization that focuses on economic development for local economies. The event is at the Collider at 6 o'clock. It is a free event. It has a registration and it does tend to fill up. I encourage you to come. If you can, get online and reserve your seat. Our next big event will be the State of Downtown Luncheon. This is an annual event that we do. We include Brownie, the County Commission Chair, and Esther will be there to speak. I believe Deborah Campbell, the new city manager, also will be there to speak to us briefly, and we'll be sharing some of the results from this year's downtown census. So that is February 26th at 12 p.m. at the U.S. Cellular Center in the banquet hall. That is a ticketed event. I believe the tickets are $15. It does always sell out. If you would like to attend, I encourage you to get those tickets soon. Next set of updates is for the Parking and Transportation Subcommittee for this commission. We meet monthly, and this month we met and talked about some success and some future work. So if you've ever been on Haywood Street and caught in backed up traffic because the Civic Center deck is full and people are stuck in the road trying to get into it and forced to turn around, that is going to start going away. We've got a digital sign coming that's going to be posted out front of the library. You'll be able to see available and full spaces, vacancy basically, from both sides as you approach, and we hope that will help ease the traffic there. The timeline is approximately by graduation, which is a large event for downtown. Not quite in time for SoCon, but bear with us. We're also reviewing loading zones. We have an ongoing survey. Franz will be sharing with you about the downtown census, which is still open. If you're a downtown business, we encourage you to take the survey and help us identify some of our current issues and possible solutions. One of which we're focusing on is loading zones and their availability and proximity and timing. Lastly, one quick update about the Cox Avenue surface lot. The city has a lease on the county-owned land next to the bus depot, bus station on Cox Avenue, and they're 24-hour a day spaces. They're $70 a month. We're reserved by the city to help downtown business employees and workforce have spaces accessible to them 24 hours a day. There are 19 left. The only way to reserve them is to call parking services. And that is it for the parking transportation updates. How about Franzi? Do you have some information? Local living economy?
Sure, I'll just follow up with the census. The census closes on the 18th of this month, and we've got 150 entries so far. Our goal is to have at least 200. We collected the information last year. We actually did things about it, and we outlined that in an infographic you guys can see. Go to either ashevillegrown.com under latest, and the link to the survey is there, or ashevilledowntown.org, and you'll be able to take the survey, share it with other business owners that you know, and see the infographic which outlines what we learned and what was done with the information. So it's very, very helpful for us to understand the needs of our downtown. I'm going to follow up on the Building Our City Speaker Series. This is something that Asheville Grown Business Alliance is also sponsoring, and the Local Living Economy Subcommittee of the Downtown Commission has worked on it with the other sponsors. Kimber Lanning is amazing. She is going to tell us what she did. She runs a campaign similar to ours, the Love Asheville Global campaign, except it's statewide. They also have a Spanish section of their campaign, and they've done some phenomenal work in working with Phoenix and policy, not only with the city of Phoenix, but statewide, and she's a so please come out to that Wednesday the 13th, 6 to 7 at the Glider. Also, we're going to have a party. Next week is Go Local Week, officially proclaimed by the city of Asheville. The week of Valentine's in Asheville is Go Local Week, and we're going to have a big party at the Great Eagle Saturday afternoon, the 16th, family friendly, 1:30 to 4, and just to celebrate our community, and everybody's invited. It's free, so please find your calendars for that too. And that's all we've got.
Thank you, Francie. All right, Stephen Lee, how about an update from Design Review Committee?
Yes, we had two projects that came before us on January 15th. Brent Campbell and Ann Winkler were there along with myself to review them. The first was another visit from Roadhouse Architects and Jeff Dalton to discuss the Flatiron Building project. Jeff was simply there to request suggestions and comments from the Design Review Committee about how his presentation might be more effective in his next meeting with the Downtown Commission, which is today. So we appreciate him making that effort to reach out to us. We made some suggestions about things that would be helpful in understanding exactly what is going to take place. The second project was a new mixed-use project, a 5-story building being proposed, ground floor retail, upper level residential. It's kind of beside Twin Leaf Brewery on Collier Avenue in Banks, diagonally across from Vortex Donuts. I think that the committee generally gave a favorable response to the preliminary schematic designs that were presented. It did meet a lot of the goals that we know that the commission and city council are seeking. Some things that were specific that we discussed in this very preliminary stage with them were just some of the site constraints that they're dealing with and how they're looking to take advantage of their location and cooperating with the neighborhood. They did have a neighborhood meeting scheduled to occur on January 25th, and I'm assuming that took place. But and those were the two projects that we reviewed.
Thank you for that update. Any updates from you all that are also involved? Yeah, Chris? Okay, great. Thank you. We do not have Andrew Fletcher yet, so if he can update us on Public Space Management Committee, we'll come back to that. Is Mike Sewell in the room?
Right.
He is. So we're going to have a little bit of an update on the street tweets. I just heard from Andrew, he is on his way.
So thank you. I'm Mike Sewell, Executive Director of Asheville on Bikes and then Project Manager of the Street Tweets Project, which is a partnership between the Blue Ridge Bicycle Club, AARP, and my organization, Asheville on Bikes. So did you get the attachment of the report? Okay, so I know time is crunching, so you can read that. If you have any direct questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I want to let you know that I gave you the updated survey results. That survey is still live, and if you ever want to take it, all you have to do is text 555-888. In the body, write street survey, and the survey will come to you. We are also going to begin hosting tours of the corridor, so sort of a deeper dive into the facilities and the decisions that we've made and the challenges that we faced and are continuing to overcome. If you go to the last part of the report, sort of talks about next steps. We're having a volunteer appreciation party this Sunday at Twin Leaf. You all are invited to come. The party is at 3 o'clock, but we're going to do tours of the corridor at 2, and that'll take about 45 minutes to do that. I've reported back to the South Slope Neighborhood Association, so continue to get their feedback. This report will go to multimodal. And at the very end, we have some corridor tweaks. So the idea, again, with tactical urbanism is to experiment, try facilities, and then you're able to go back and change them. So we're planning to do a full removal of the street mural as opposed to doing a touch-up of that. We got fully refunded for the multi-use paint, so we're going to come back and be able to use a product. And then one of the things that we're excited to think about and would be to incorporate a loading zone into the project. for the spring. And I've talked to some businesses and, about that, who are interested in trying it. The other thing would be to also incorporate a ride share, drop off and pickup zone. And then the inclusion of bicycle facilities, bicycle racks, and things like that, are the other pieces that we've got to keep that done.
Great.
So-
Thank you for this update. I'm looking at some of the charts that I guess the public cannot see, but it looks to me like those who were surveyed, there were 164 responses. Approximately 55% of the surveyed people driving said that it had either brief delay or no impact on their driving experience. And then those who were walking, biking, etc., about 50% of them said that they felt much safer, which I think is interesting and very helpful to hear.
And also one thing to consider too is that most of the survey was conducted like in the winter, during the winter months when there tends to be less cyclists and fewer pedestrians out. So we do anticipate a uptick in survey responses now that we have like our spring winters.
Y'all are generally eco-conscious about this. The cleaning up is not going to be scraping into the sewer grates.
No, and in fact, when there was the paint fail, I did reach out to Mountain True for guidance on how to keep. And so we do have a plan we're going to minimize. I mean, when we work out there, things go into the gutter, but to minimize that impact, we have plans with bidding and international things like that. Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Keeping it out of the river. Any other questions, comments for Mike?
Yeah, hi Mike.
Hey, let's go.
Great, so thank you, good work. I do want to comment that Church Street is one way, and you may have not received, as you mentioned, enough feedback, but because it's one way and the first road out is Cock Banks and such, a lot of people who park there for work actually have found, because I over there,
Yeah,
talking to
yes.
people running the stop sign because they don't see it. So I'm wondering if there's any plans for maybe increasing the visibility of pedestrian walkway versus cars needing to stop. And I know I've personally witnessed it as well.
No, thank you for that. I have not seen that directly in the comments in the survey, so I really want to look at I will write that down, but please, if you can share the survey, if you can get that in there, that's information to bring to. The street tweaks cannot change the right of way without like support from the city of Asheville determines really but we can make that recommendation. I can't go out there with a crew and change the stop sign.
No, I recognize that, but it's the stop sign that's like right in front of the auditorium. Like I've seen people blow right through it at 20 miles an hour. And that right now there's not a lot of foot traffic. That will become an issue.
Absolutely. So that is something to look at, and I will look at it. But please get people to take the survey and get that in. That would be very useful.
And once again, that was 888-555.
888, yeah, 555.
888-555.
And then in the body, right, street survey is in the kind of.
Okay.
And I'm not mad here. I want to let you all know that we just received a $5,000 grant from People for Bikes to continue tackle urbanism projects. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thanks for being here today, Mike.
Thank you.
Those of you standing in the back, I do see a couple seats up front if you want to grab them. See two over here, possibly one back there, one up here. Okay, Andrew, welcome. We had jumped past you, but perhaps you could give us an update on the Public Space Management Committee?
I don't think strategies to reduce the negative impacts during construction for businesses, and things like signage and media campaigns and other initiatives. So if anyone's interested in being a part of that, I think we'll definitely have ADA involved, and I'm sure representatives of the downtown commission can get to more of that later. City-owned property, staff is gonna go to council on February 26th, for direction on next steps. Haywood Page redevelopment, city council, directed staff at their January, 22nd meeting to move forward with identifying funding for a consultant's work to work on design options and ultimately a final design plan for the future of those properties. So staff is currently working on identifying a funding strategy. Visiting artist program, no real updates on that, but we keep you posted. Streets and sidewalks, the city's concrete crew is finishing up Collier Avenue between Buxton and Millard. It's taken a long time, but they have about 40 feet left to go to finish that section of sidewalk. EPIS management, we have this in last month's report, and I think I skipped over it, but staff is working on strategies to mitigate these issues in the future. So staff is talking with developers and architects early on in the process during the pre-application meeting, and also looking at exploring other options like banning material and other mitigation strategies. So we hope to have some time at the design review committee to talk a little bit more about that next week.
Dana, if I may, is there still a way to report it when we see it? We're talking about the styrofoam-like material that is
For the arrays?
or any projects. I saw some.
Well, on
Yes,
that
okay.
project, there was a direct matter to that contractor, so that's still the best way, I think, to report those issues.
Maybe otherwise the actual app.
Otherwise, the asphalt app, you can tell me if it's downtown, and that's the best I can say at this point.
Wonderful. So if you're seeing the styrofoam, grab a picture, use the actual app.
Yeah, I have noticed it seems to be worse this week. It was better for a while, but it's definitely worse now.
They're doing some more work up there. Okay, thank you.
Dana asked me to cover this. So now the Parisian residences, which you all saw maybe 6 months ago, news is basically voided out, it's not expired, so that project is, if they wanted to pursue that, they'd have to reapply and start over. So Stephen Lee already covered this today. So, 45 South Branch Road Park Broad will be coming in the next couple of months to you all for an addition on the upper stories. We reviewed variants around that topic about a year or so ago. And the Banks Avenue project will be coming in. Embassy Suites, which is still in the courts really, but at the end, or kind of the end stage of that. So they've proceeded at their own risk. We have left some legal agreements where they can pursue their final TRC approval and building permit review, but at their own risk. So if something happened and the city won their case, which doesn't look likely at this point, but then they would be stopped, right? But if they won that case, it would move forward.
And that, there's no more review on our end. Going back to TRC is their final TRC, right?
Yes, unless the building changes substantially, and then that will trigger that. So
Let's hope they don't. Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
and just a couple other notes. So staff is working on updates to the noise ordinance. Some proposed ordinance changes that recently came to council were not approved. So development services is leading up that effort, and there will be opportunities for the downtown commission to weigh in on that. And also there's a survey open now on Open City Hall where you can provide input on qualities of the new police chief to be hired.
Great, thank you, ladies. Any questions for Dana or Sasha? Okay, thank you. We are through the update series. We are on to new business. So we are going to talk about the flat iron. Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, we have one more thing. We're going to make time today, we're gonna take something from the end of the agenda and move it up as a quick update instead of a discussion. If you could just introduce yourself, because you are fairly new staff.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jessica Morris. I'm the Assistant Director of Transportation. I am relatively new, about 7 months in. I promise I did not bring any scooters with me when I came here. So the Transportation Department has been working on a bike share study for a year or more. And we were very close to getting towards the end of that study when we had e-scooters come to our town. And so we decided that we needed to incorporate that into the bike share study. So we are in the process of doing that. We're calling it now a shared mobility study. So it's going to be looking at bike share, e-scooters, and other similar kinds of mobility devices. We've been researching and studying and talking to lots of other cities, especially in North Carolina. And we are going to be holding a public meeting next week on February 18th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the TD Bank building downtown. That's at 200 College Street. It's going to be more of a drop-in style open house meeting. That's to collect feedback, kind of final feedback on bike share, but since we haven't really had an opportunity to have kind of initial public feedback on e-scooters, this would be a great time to provide that. And then the plan is to finish up that initial shared mobility study. Now that does not mean that we're finalizing any kind of plans for e-scooters or bike share. This study is meant to give kind of broad recommendations for how to move forward. And so if the community and the council is interested in potentially trying a pilot or some sort for e-scooters, then we would move into a more rigorous and detailed analysis of what that might look like, including how they would be regulated, how the companies themselves would be regulated, what a permit process or a franchise agreement might look like, and how they would be used and where and how many, all those details. And that's where we would be getting, I would say, the most public feedback, coming to you guys to get your input as well as other groups in the community. So we have the public meeting next week. There's also going to be a public survey launched on Open City Hall in the next few days. So we'll be getting more information there. And then we plan to go to the city council with the shared mobility study on March 12th. That's kind of a preliminary date, but and then after that, if there is a desire to move forward with the program, we would dive into more detailed analysis and community.
Thank you. So if you are here to have public comment about e-scooters, we are actually not going to be doing that today. We're going to move it to our March meeting. So we're going to respect that the Flatiron has a lot of input today and move that down. Is that all right with everybody? Most of the Flatiron can.
I do have,
Okay, great.
since I won't be attending the meeting next week, I have a conflict. I do want to ask, and you don't have to answer, just for note, when I hear the word shared mobility, I think of different ability people, and folks are getting used to me now to know that I care about that matter. And so, I think about the size of our sidewalks and the width, and there's already a lot going on with people with different abilities to actually navigate terrain that's often up and down.
Right.
Has that been, again, I don't necessarily need to comment, but has that been something that's been strongly layered over this idea of shared mobility?
Yes.
Because the impediment of differently abled people at the expense of, I know you guys, at the expense of mobile,
Right.
things can be very jarring.
I think that's the biggest, that's going to be probably one of the largest foci of the study.
Thank you.
Because, our sidewalks are narrow in places. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of people. We need to make sure that whatever we introduce into our transportation system is not going to further exacerbate those issues. So looking at how, if and how, so if is yes or no, and then if yes, then how would we do it in a way that makes it not make things worse in that realm?
Should mention that the ADA for at least the last 5 years has done a walkability study in downtown, and we did have people with different abilities in that study. I don't think it's been done every year, but at least every other year that's been done, and a lot of progress has been made. And that's all documented with the ADA Issues Committee.
this moment in time, the current legislation doesn't even address these types of devices. It's possible that there will be some bills that come forward in this next session. My impression is that bills that might come forward will likely define what an e-scooter is or other types of devices because there's no definition of what it is. That's the kind of primary difficulty right now for cities. And so there would probably be a definition and then likely something that says, and cities may regulate as they wish. And so the idea would be that each city in North Carolina would be able to create their own rules, so to speak. That's what I've been hearing, is that there's not going to be like an outright ban on them from the state level, but more of a, here's what they are, and then cities can go ahead and figure out if you want them, and if you do, then how would you regulate them? How would you permit them?
Great, and just to be clear, we will hear about this and share our input on March. It's not going to have our input. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, everybody, we are moving into the Flatiron Design Review. If you haven't seen an agenda, there were some by the front door. I want to take a couple minutes to explain this process and a special process that we created specifically for today. So the procedure is that we are going to open the item, staff is going to come and deliver a staff report and how the process has gotten to this point and what their recommendations are. Then we as a commission will ask them questions, we will then hear from the developer, who will have their 10 minutes to share their input about the project and answer our questions, and we'll have a go around up here. Once we do that, we will open for public comment, and then we will come back to us for review. Now, what matters here is what can be commented on and what we can discuss in design review. So this is a unique project in that it has already been constructed. Are you having a hard time hearing? Okay, let me move this a little closer. Okay, let's see. I will talk very closely to the mic. Perfect. I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So we have a couple things are going to happen. The staff is going to come up. They're going to give a report on the project to date and the things they have reviewed and their recommendations. We will invite the development team to come up and share their input and their thoughts on the project. And then we as a commission will have some back and forth asking questions of the developer and of staff if needed. Then we will open it up to public comment. You will be invited to come up one at a time, state your name, and be given 3 minutes each to share your input. Now, the critical thing to understand here is what we can and cannot discuss, both as a commission and what we can and cannot comment on as the public. And we have, to help ease this and make sure that everyone feels heard today, we've created 2 agenda items. The first one is going to be specific to design review. Does the building meet our design guidelines, which is a specific set of rules? So we are not here to decide or vote or share our opinions on whether or not this should be a hotel versus any other use. We do not review use. We do not review, in this case, things like parking or streetscape. We are reviewing the design of the building itself, which is unique because it is already constructed. Now that said, we feel as a commission and for public's sake that there is a whole other discussion to have that is separate to the design of the building around the impacts to downtown, the impacts to parking, the impacts to the community, the impacts of lodging, and all of these things. So we created a second agenda item to allow for that discussion. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so I don't want to be rude, but if you come up and you have a comment that is unrelated to design, I will politely ask you to stop and come back with a second set of public comments, okay? This is so that the developer has a fair process and that we review just the design as we are supposed to and authorized to, okay? Great. Everybody clear up here? All ready to go? Okay, how about that? Let's all be really close to microphones.
Thanks, Chair, members of the Commission, and the public. My name is Dr. Bernstein. I'm planner with the Planning and Urban Design Department. So, to proceed with the design review, I'm going to start by giving you a basic summary of the project. required to go through a conditional zoning process. And when the site is in the downtown, they're required to request the CBD expansion zoning district. So we've got a number of design requirements that mirror what's in the general CBD zoning district. The applicant will be required to comply with those. A lot of the requirements that you're familiar with and you've reviewed previously for design aspects of the zoning code have to do really with new construction, where we get into talking about the street wall setback and fenestration, and a lot of those design focused zoning requirements are for new construction. So in this case, the building is already existing, so most of those standards are really not applicable. They're renovating that building. Some of the standards that are applicable from the zoning district have to do with providing parking, and that is something that will be handled through council condition. I've noted in the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have directly related to that, but it's less about design, so I was going to try to stray away from that. Sidewalks are a requirement for downtown projects. When you have this expansion zoning district, you're required to have a wider sidewalk than we normally require. We require to have 12 feet of sidewalk with 8 feet of unobstructed pedestrian zone. So on Battery Park Avenue, they are proposing to widen that stretch well beyond 12 feet. It's up to 30 feet in some areas. There's some bulb outs that are there existing. They've proposed modifying some of the bulb outs and improving some others. So they do meet that standard along Battery Park Avenue. This image shows the existing streetscape. There's the building, Battery Park Avenue. There are these existing bulb outs, crosswalk, 6 on-street parking spaces. Here's the Wall Street frontage. The current proposal from the applicant shows pushing out that sidewalk to really widen and enlarge that pedestrian zone, so they will meet and exceed that sidewalk standard. They've shown moving the sidewalk down a bit. They've also shown the creation of a second bulb out that's closer on the other side of Wall Street in front of the Flatiron Building. We know this is a site of heavy congregation. So by enlarging that space as well, the public benefit would be more pedestrian areas along this stretch. It's notable that the previous parking configuration they've shown is different. You know, currently there's the pull-in spaces. There's 6 of them, 5 spaces, typical spaces, and 1 accessible space. So what they proposed at this time would be retaining the 1 accessible space, and then the creation of an enlarged loading zone. This would be a publicly available loading zone. They could not designate it just for their own use. So we've heard a lot from the public about congestion in this block, especially with trucks loading and unloading. We know that the public uses Lyft and Uber substantially more. So this, if approved, this loading area is large enough for some of the delivery trucks, but also would be available to any vehicle for that shortened duration. All public loading zones are signed. You know, I think it's 30 minutes. I'm not sure, but there's a standard sign for all public loading zones. The proposal technically would be required to meet that 12-foot width of sidewalk on Wall Street as well. I've noted this in the staff report. That's one another addition that the applicant will be requesting. Wall Street has a very unique streetscape along the entire length of it. So we've met with the city staff and multiple departments and the applicant and talked about this. It's been talked about at the design review committee as well. Whether weighing the benefits to having an applicant do a piecemeal partial improvement that would be disruptive to that comprehensive streetscape that's in place right now, or requesting a condition from council to leave it as is. And we've left it at the point where the applicants were going to request to leave the Wall Street surface as is so that the city can focus on a comprehensive improvement of the entire stretch. But what they are doing is So this frontage along Wall Street will be activated. Right now, those doors and windows are not really active. The windows are painted over, so that will be something that they'll be improving for the project. So where there's two doorways that will now be more, that would be utilized, they will be creating an accessible path 5 foot wide out to the street so that that does meet accessibility requirements for folks leaving the building. But otherwise, at this point, the request is not to improve the surface along the building, and staff is supportive of that for now. Getting back into the design review, I mentioned that most of the design standards that are in the zoning district relate primarily to new construction. So most of them are really not applicable. But going through the design guidelines, we've noted a number of them that the project does support. Due to the landmark status of the building, the HRC, the Historic Resources Commission, performs an extensive review. They're reviewing everything that's proposed to be done to the building itself, inside, the outside of the building, the rooftop addition, all of that is reviewed according to the Secretary of the Interior standards. They've been to the Historic Resources Commission. A certificate of appropriateness was approved by the HRC in November at their meeting. There's a couple of items that the applicant would be required to return to them to finalize some details on, but that extensive and detailed review has taken place. It is a mandatory review and it is mandatory compliance. So staff has discussed this numerous times with the HRC staff and feels very comfortable with their review. The applicant, the architect, is here. He can speak a little more about what that review entails. But we rest assured that the guidelines that we have in the design review guidelines talk about retaining original characteristics of historic buildings. It talks about historic reuse as being an ideal situation, preserving historic buildings, and historic features. So what they're proposing to do with the building is well aligned with the design guidelines that you all have, as well as with the streetscape improvements. The design guidelines talk about enlarging the sidewalk, creating this active and safe pedestrian area, and that's certainly what they're proposing to do along Battery Park. So with those comments, the staff does recommend approval of the design guidelines review for the Downtown Commission. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments?
I have a question for the commission and for you, Brian, if you could weigh in. So I'm looking at the charter of the Downtown Commission, and there are 5 things that we're charged to do. And item 3 is design review, right? But item 2, and I'll just read it right here, provide recommendations for effective management of the public resources in downtown and actively pursue and assist private sector investment in the downtown area for the welfare of the citizens of Asheville. So that's not design, that's the public areas around the building. So my argument would be that we do have the charter to look at the whole project, not just the design, but to look at the whole project.
I agree, actually. I mean, I think that's part of the intent of the second agenda item. So we can make a recommendation in that second agenda item. We have to isolate design review. It's a yay or nay. It met the requirements or it didn't. And then we can have a separate discussion around these are our concerns, this is our additional input, whatever that might be, reasons we might support it, et cetera. And then have an express recommendation to council. Does that feel like it meets what, because in that realm, we can discuss any of the impacts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just state my opinion here. I think from a design point of view, it's been through the design review committee. I mean, the design is not the issue here. The problem is the public space around the building.
So let's keep that for the second agenda item. And at this point, if we have other questions for Jessica, the next step is to bring up the developer and hear from them. Any specific questions for Jessica? We can always go back to, this isn't, we're not closing our opportunity. Yeah.
What type of surface was going to be on the Wall Street, intended on the Wall Street sidewalk area?
So that's not intended to change
correct me if I'm wrong. So the current cobblestone, I don't know if we have a picture of that. The current sidewalk, which isn't technically a sidewalk on the Wall Street side, when they activate that frontage of the building, there you go. All of a sudden it triggers a whole bunch of things. That isn't ADA compliant. It's, I don't know if it's the street trees or all that, but what happens is then, what I'm hearing is that if we require that to become a standard sidewalk, well, we have a width issue, it also looks like, in adjacency to the road. But it also triggers other things, pulling the trees that are there, right? Removing this cobblestone, which may or may not be something we consider a benefit to that historic corridor, right? So what you're saying is it doesn't need it for this particular cause, but the impacts of changing that to conform with the current code are also not favorable.
I think we have, what we're seeing, and it's partially design, partially the zoning, is that we're weighing different benefits. When you look at Battery Park, for instance, removal of on-street parking is not, our design guidelines don't speak to that, but we're looking at what they're trying to do, which does align with our design guidelines, enlarging that pedestrian area, creating more space for the public and to congregate, to move, to activate that streetscape. So that is in line with our design guidelines, but by doing that, we have a loss of on-street parking, which is a different kind of city policy. So we're weighing those benefits. When you look at Wall Street, our first thought is you're required by the use you're proposing in the zoning district to have a 12-foot wide sidewalk. Clearly, they don't have the width to do that. They would have to request a condition to have less than the required width. We've looked at, could you just pave that width that's there, 5 feet or so, 6 feet maybe. If they were to do that, they would have to take the trees out, so then there's a condition for not having street trees. Could we move the street trees to the other side? Probably not, because we've got those street lights, so there's a conflict there. We know where there's water lines that are going to water lines and utilities in the street that are going to make it difficult to try to push street trees out a little bit further. So, our first goal is how can you meet the standard? And when we start to look at that, it opens up another series of work that we can. And then the other aspect where we've got this comprehensive streetscape look along Wall Street, like it or not, it is in place for that whole street right now. And is it in the community's best interest to try to do little piecemeal Band-Aid improvements? Is that going to be our best effort? And so for now, the city staff's thought was, that's not probably our best effort. I don't know that it's going to get everyone the result they want when you factor in the trees and the width and the utilities and the look. So for now, staff is comfortable with that condition to at least create the accessible pathway out to the street, which is also an accessible surface. And we may look at, do we need to do better signage for crossings to the other side of the street where those walkways come out, so that we're getting to the goal of pedestrian safety as a bit of a Band-Aid until we can do a more comprehensive improvement of the entire streetscape, but also then keeping the trees in place for now and keeping some sort of continuity. So it's one of these weighing of different benefits. It's not simple.
So would I be accurate in saying that staff recommendation that some of these areas is just a judgment call, and that reasonable commission members might disagree with that judgment call?
Everyone can have their own outlook on it, certainly.
And let's try and talk really closely to the microphones today. Go ahead.
May I ask, so by activating, from the building's perspective, by activating that, they mean that they're just going to open up the windows there?
The windows and the doors, two
And
doors.
the doors, okay, but nothing else is planned for that?
No.
So the pedestrian experience here, particularly a differently abled person, is really stuck in the street.
Well, it's not a sidewalk now, so yes, it is. It's really tricky. I didn't realize. I realized that when you attempt to walk on that surface, it's practically impossible for an able-bodied person at this point. But when we talked about it with the transportation department, they said, well, that's because it's not technically a sidewalk right now. When that street was designed, in place by ADA standards because it's not a sidewalk. So when we do any sort of improvement to it, it would become a sidewalk. Right now, to live as is, it is technically not a sidewalk. It's not ideal, for sure.
Is it just like landscaping then, or what is it?
Yeah, it's just hardscaping. You know, we were trying to find out when it exactly was approved. It was in the.
And this was a capital project that the city did, you know, it was very intentionally designed to push people on the other side, to activate all those storefronts. It was done in the late 80s, early 90s. This is a national example of a lunar for a shared street. It's in technical books for transportation.
The cobble is also, the granite cobble is also why those ginkgos are doing so well. And I think that was probably the primary reason. One of the reasons it was done is because it's a really good growing environment for those trees. So
Thanks for adding that. That's interesting.
So it looks like the current tree spacing there is denser than the regulation. So if trees were to go in some the trees were to go and come back, they wouldn't have to come back in that many, right?
Well, if they were to go, if we were to explore requiring an improved sidewalk on that side of the street, we'd have to look at first how much width is possible. There wouldn't be likely any width for street trees because of the location of a water line, and then the clear room that we need, a minimum of 4 feet between the edge of the building and the tree to maintain accessibility. So with the little bit of space that's there with the building and the water line, and then the road and maintaining that travel lane, it would likely be impossible to put any trees back in on that section.
Is there a rendering of the utilities under the sidewalk in this packet?
utility plan.
There is? Yeah. Scrolling.
For battery and wall, or just wall?
You can see here where this is, I have the same color pen, so it's not going to be that helpful, but right here is
That is the water.
one of the lines, the utility line.
Okay.
And just to be clear, not to drag this out, but on the other side, you know, where those bollards are, that is literally a wall. So underneath the sidewalk is a vaulted alley. I mean, there's nothing under there. You can't put trees over there.
Oh, right.
It's empty under
Wall Street, there's a Wall Street under Wall Street.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, there's a rat alley or whatever you
We have an
wanna call
expert
it.
here.
It's
Yeah.
literally a wall.
Yeah.
Making any little piecemeal changes to Wall Street is pretty complicated. It definitely opens up a lot of different questions that we're not sure how feasible it would be.
Interesting. Okay. Any other questions for Jessica at this moment before we bring up the development team?
Yeah, question. So from an ADA point of view, the drop-off is on Wall Street, I believe, is that true? The loading zone?
No.
No.
Not on Wall
It's on Battery Park, but that's a public loading.
Right,
So that's occupied from an ADA point of view. Does that comply to ADA guidelines?
They are proposing, so for as far as accessibility, there is a handicap space that they are proposing. That would remain, and that would always be open to only folks who have a hang tag. The proposed loading zone is that space that would be available to anyone in the public, as all loading zones are signed downtown. So this zoning district, when you have the CBD expansion zoning district, there's a standard in zoning code that says no guest drop-off in the primary access place. And some of the local governments have guest drop-off right out front. And because of that, the city wrote the standard to not permit that any longer. So this space could not be designated simply for visitors to the hotel. We also have a standard in the zoning district that says no loading zone on pedestrian streets. We have that, and you know, as you know, most of the streets in the downtown, especially the traditional downtown core, are pedestrian streets. That section is in the code though, so that every application that comes in for every new tenant or every new business doesn't say, oh, and I need a loading zone on the front. I need a loading zone. Before you know it, we've got space designated as loading zone. So we want that to be written in the code so that this is an exception rather than a rule. We do know when we take a bird's eye view, and you know that there's issues with loading, especially in this area, but all throughout downtown, because we don't have a lot of spaces for would there be appropriate loading spaces? We know that the city knows that we need to accommodate for this in certain locations. There happens to be a good amount of loading spaces in this vicinity, and actually right here where they're proposing to do that bulb out, there's sort of a loading space right there. So it may then be eliminated or certainly reduced if this second bulb out is approved by the city. And this loading zone, this enlarged loading zone then can kind of share some of that responsibility.
Council approval, right? So
Right.
council will have to specifically approve this loading zone and the loss of those on-street parking
It's
spaces.
changed, yep, it's changed.
We, however, will not.
There's also a very large loading zone right across the street.
Exactly.
So there'd be two very large loading zones on one very short block.
One more question on this. We're looking at sort of a lot longer sidewalk being added, it looks like, in this design.
Andrew, can you speak closer? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry,
It looks like we're adding a lot of sidewalk in this proposed design. To be clear, that is public space, right? That is not to be administered by the owner of the building, correct?
It's public space, it's, as shown on the plan. Now, all businesses downtown have the ability to go through the process that the city has established to create outdoor dining or outdoor spaces. And this is a big topic of conversation that the commission's had and the public is having, is how do we navigate private use of public space? So that is something that we've asked for the applicant to kind of get a thought behind right now, or earlier rather than later. It's not typically a part of the early stages of a review for a project. Once a project is constructed, they would apply to the Public Works Department to reserve that space. And that's sort of the way the process has been for a good long time. We asked them to kind of designate right now how much they think that they would intend at that time to try to get for themselves for their outdoor dining spaces. And so they've shown a little bit on the plan. They're not committing to this, and the city's not committing to approving it at this time. We're having a discussion as to whether it would be better to have that space close to the building or out at the street. We've got examples throughout downtown of both of those. And I don't know that anyone has landed on what is really the best situation. What we're looking at when we look at this conceptual idea is ensuring that they are maintaining at least 8 feet of clear, unobstructed pedestrian pathway on either side where that would be.
So we just, at this point, don't know exactly how the change configuration of a sidewalk would actually be sliced up and diced up as far as what remains public and what's proposed to be converted into an outdoor dining design or something like that. Is that correct?
That's correct. It wouldn't be a part of the process at this early stage, but I think that any comments that you have about it as a commission are helpful as we're going through the process, not just for this project and kind of thinking about how that might look, but just in general, moving forward. That's something that I think matters to us a lot.
It's my understanding, I see an area delineated for outdoor dining very clearly on that, that's adjacent to the building. So that's the way that I'm kind of looking at this and how it's gonna impact the public. Adjacent dining is something that's likely gonna be requested in detail, where that line is delineated on the plan right now.
That was a conceptual, we asked them to say, where do you think you want it? So that we had a sense of how much space would be left around there. The transportation department wasn't sold that adjacent to the building was the best location for maintaining that clear pedestrian path. From our perspective in planning, we thought adjacent to the building does make a lot of sense. Then you don't have serving staff walking across the sidewalk to get to the area that's out by the cars. So again, it's another one of these situations where you have benefits on both sides and there's not one clear winner, I guess. So, but really truly comments that you all have as to how you think that impacts close to the building or closer to the street, how you think that impacts the public spaces. Those comments are really appreciated and can factor into the review. But I wouldn't say that them showing this location is not something that anyone would be locked into.
Can you speak to I'm sorry, can you speak to Battery Park becoming two-way? Because I see it looking like it's two-way instead of, right now it's one-way.
Sure. When the plans first came in for this proposal, the enlargement of the sidewalk area was wider. It went further into Battery Park Avenue, and the plan also showed a bike path. And they were getting at trying to meet some of the other aspects of the zoning code. After meeting with the transportation department and planning department, we felt like the bike path just for that little stretch really didn't factor into the city's bike plan. It didn't make a tremendous amount of sense for this location and for downtown. So we got further on the discussion of, would it be possible in the future, near future or later future, to return this section of Battery Park Avenue to two-way traffic? So the transportation, the city traffic engineer asked them to make sure that they restricted the width that they were proposing for the improvement, restrict it so that there would be at least 20 feet of travel lane maintained, so that that could be explored, moving back to two-way. We don't want to approve or support any improvements to the streetscape that are going to restrict the ability to do something different in the future when it comes to why is this one section of Battery Park one way.
So is the travel space, the actual road space, staying the exact same as it is today? The width of the travelable part of Battery Park remaining exactly the same?
I don't think it's exactly the same. I want to make sure that the engineer for the project confirms that. The bulb outs are a little deeper, I think, than the depth of the existing parking spaces. So I don't have that exactly in my head. This shows, the plan that they're proposing shows the ability for two-way. It doesn't in any way mean that two-way gets approved. You know, it just allows for that conversation to be open in the future.
So the council will not be weighing all.
Well, I'm not, actually, when we looked at the standards and specifications manual, it said that the city traffic engineer makes determinations on one-way or two-way. He wasn't certainly going to make that determination just out of thin air on his own without getting a lot of information and input. So I'm sure, I don't know exactly at what stage that would get decided. But this proposal just allows for that to be a possibility.
So can I just clarify a couple things for all of our stakes? So we, in design review, this portion of the agenda item that's specific to design, we can discuss our thoughts on the wider sidewalk, the outdoor dining potential, and where it might be, but we should stay away from the loss of the on-street parking.
We
also
don't-
maybe talk about two-way traffic.
I think that my thought is those would be better handled in the second element, just because there are no design guidelines that relate back to loss of parking spaces or on-street parking spaces or travel lanes. There are design guidelines that talk about the streetscape for sure.
And loading, right?
That it's really more of a UDO requirement.
Okay. All right, are we ready for the development team? Good, okay.
Sometimes you just need to laugh.
It's a confusing process. Great.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Chris Day. I'm with Civil Design Concepts here in Asheville. I'd like to thank Jessica and Sasha and all of staff, transportation engineer Andrew, and everyone. This has been a big conversation. I appreciate everyone's input to get us where we are today. Usually I'm here before you guys with more civil engineering site development type work, with this being the preservation of the historic Flatiron building. The civil engineering, the old school civil engineering side is a lot more reduced. There is the boring aspect of the fact that we're bringing a new water line connection in. It'll be underground, nobody's gonna see it. But what it will do, right now, this area of Battery Park is served by a loop that comes off of Page. And we will be going down and tying to the new water line in Hayward Road, cross-connecting those. That will give us the opportunity to sprinkle, to put fire suppression into the Flatiron building, which it currently does not have. It also provides a second source of water for any of those businesses along Battery Park, so that if something happened, a water main break happened on Page Avenue, there's still another source of water to serve Battery Park and the fire suppression for our new building. The other thing that this gave us the opportunity, what we've been talking about here, was to kind of look at issues and opportunities of the area. And one of the most significant issues that we heard about this area was the loading, the loading area here. And this is an aerial image that you can see here, even in this snapshot. There's 2 delivery trucks that are parked, encroaching into Battery Park Avenue. So what we started looking at doing was taking, there's a couple other pictures I want to show to clarify and continue on to some of the things that Jessica made reference. So that was one of the main issues that we were looking at. Some of the opportunities we were looking at. I've got a similar view of Wall Street here, and the similar view of Wall Street and those existing areas, as well as the streetscape as you come up from Battery Park. We recognize the importance of the pedestrian environment in this area, and so our goals with making modifications to the streetscape were to improve the pedestrian experience in this area. Our other goal was to better define what happens with loading in the area, because right now there's almost 26 feet of kind of canvas for one-way traffic. The fire marshal requires 14 feet of width for a one-lane road, and with the 26 foot, what we end up with out there is kind of a lot of chaos. We end up with people who can just park in the middle of the road, cars go around, it's an unsafe environment, and it's just, there's not a lot of regulation there. Jessica showed a couple of exhibits on our existing and proposed streetscape. I've kind of taken this here to show both of those at one time, kind of walk you through what that includes. Can everyone hear my voice? Yeah. So the items that we referenced, this is the existing cross-section right here. And as it stands today, there's about 5 feet of clear area between the tree breaks and the building. There's a couple of little pockets of outdoor dining on the outside, as well as the iron sculpture that is across Wall Street. And as you saw in that streetscape, an area where busking and a lot of people gather here. There is existing a standard loading zone here. There are also 2 parallel parking spaces, with the one closest to Haywood Street being only 17 feet in length, which does not meet the standards. What we've proposed to do is to reallocate space here so that we have 2 compliant parallel parking spaces, along with widening out the bowl here to create more opportunity for the pedestrians to gather at the busking location. In addition, we relocated this existing loading zone. We moved it closer to a central location for the block to be better utilized for everyone. And we also elongated it for delivery vehicles. What our goals here in doing would be to better define that streetscape to a more standard cross-section and not have all the excess pavement that vehicles and delivery trucks can use. Our goal here is to provide a defined area for those so that it makes a safer environment and also something that's easier to enforce with the police department. As Jessica made reference, this does also offer the opportunity with this streetscape for it to become two-way if the city desires in the future. The additional streetscape, we end up with about 1,200, a little more than 1,200 square feet of pedestrian space, sidewalk space in this scenario. We've shown just an idea with this of about 500 square feet along the face of the building that can be utilized for outdoor dining. But as Jessica says, we fully recognize that that's a separate process, and here we're basically looking to create a larger pedestrian canvas so that we can explore those options in more detail. What we do know is that with, however that may be, we've increased the clear span area that from the 5 feet that's out there today to greater than 8 feet. Most places it'll be 12 feet or more, depending on the placement of the street trees. In addition, all of this area that we're making changes and modifications to, we will be installing granite curbing. That's currently not there, even though we've got a historic structure here. We're looking to install the historic granite curbing in this area. One of the benefits, while we're open to the conversation about where that outdoor dining lives, one of the benefits that we saw with the dining close to the building, as we continue to talk about different pros and cons, was the ability that it takes the clear path for pedestrians walking through and pulls them away from the building. And then as you cross with the new crosswalk at Wall Street, it pulls the individuals away to allow for the more congregating around the iron. One of the other technical, I'll go back to a couple of the technical conditions that were made reference to. Here at Wall Street, we do intend to request the condition to leave this as Jessica made reference to. Our thoughts right now, there's already a pattern here of some pavers that are more accessible in nature, and that we could utilize that similar pattern at our two doorways to improve and provide accessibility from the building doorways out to Wall Street. We're in support of leaving this as is, simply for the fact that we all they cherish the Flatiron building. One of the other conditions that came up is the condition for the project, and that is parking. So we want to make reference that the participating historical nature of applicable 40 parking spaces. As we go forward to City Council, we propose to state that we will provide those 40 parking spaces within the central business district, and we will identify where those spaces will be prior to requesting a certificate of occupancy for the building. I know that'll be more of a conversation as we move forward, but it was a kind of a technical condition that came up in the staff report. So.
And just for clarity purposes, those off-site spaces have to be within 500 feet of the project?
So as we request a condition for no on-site parking, and for that parking to be outside, that condition, we are not looking to limit it to 500 feet. It would be somewhere within the central business district. For those purposes, we propose to manage that via our all valet parking for this project. The aspect of that valet, just to clarify that valet parking, our goals there would be that we will, as a condition for a certificate of occupancy, we will identify where those 40 parking spaces, the required parking spaces, will be in the central business district, We do anticipate that some of those may be over 500 feet from the site. We met with parking services in the fall and understand that typically there are over 100 spaces after hours at the Wall Street and Rankin Street decks. As we all know, there are no spaces during the day. Those are rented out, but in the evenings, those are empty spaces. So it is our desire to contract with the city for additional space in those Wall Street and parking decks to find sources of revenue for the city in the evening times when those spaces are empty, but also to provide convenience for us. And then with the idea that these will all be valet managed, that we can ensure that daytime parking spaces are not encumbered, and that any parking spaces in those city decks are relocated to the off-street spaces.
I have a question.
Sure. What's your question?
It's a clarification question because I think I'm not understanding. So for just a question of clarification, am I hearing you correctly to say that the 50 required or mandatory parking spaces, would it be 24-hour parking spaces, and they would require, they're basically for able-bodied people who could hustle?
So that's a good question, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. So all parking will be managed with valet service. So the intention would be that any patron that would be coming here to the restaurant, to the hotel, to the retail that's proposed would have the opportunity to use the valet service and be dropped off at the accessible loading area.
Including employees who may work there?
So there will be 40 parking spaces that meet the city requirement that will be identified within the central business district. Those spaces will be preserved and reserved for 24 hours at all times. What we're saying that above that, we are also proposing, or we have the desire to utilize some of the empty spaces that are in some of the the city parking decks, so that there's a source of revenue for the city and also an aspect of convenience for ourselves. Then those spaces, those cars can be relocated at such time so that they didn't interfere with day-to-day practices. That's similar to the two-way, similar to the on-street dining. It has further conversations with city staff on the details. But the big picture, the required parking spaces would be 24 hours a day, but they will be somewhere in the central business district, somewhere that's necessarily not as convenient as right there on Battery Park. Overall, our goal is to improve the chaos with the delivery drop-off and improve the pedestrian experience along Battery Park. With that, I'm going to let Jeff Dalton come up and speak to the historic preservation of this building, and I'll be available for questions as the conversation continues.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm Jeff Dalton with Rhode Island Architects. I've been practicing in Asheville for the last 22 years. I grew up in Asheville when I was a kid. Dr. Connell, our dentist, was on the 7th floor at the Battery Park, the Flatiron building, and so I've been going to this building a long time. This is a historic tax credit project. It's governed by the National Park Service design standards. This is a historic tax project. It is governed by the standards of the National Park Service, and which the Historic Resources Commission also follows. We had a very productive meeting with HRC and received a certificate of appropriateness. We're going to renovate the building. We're going to fix the brick, the windows that don't work, new HVAC. In your packet, there's a scope of work on the second page, I believe it is. And we've got a restaurant on the first floor and retail space also on the point of the Wall Street and Battery Park intersection. We're going to 2 days of retail. Along Wall Street, we're taking the paint and boarded up windows, taking the paint off the windows, the plywood off the windows. The windows that are along the sidewalk go into a lower level. The majority of that is storage and basement space. Is this one? From about here over along Wall Street, the lower level is below grade, and that's all storage. Concerning the 2 exits, the 2 doors on the Wall Street side, one is a fire stair, and the other one goes into that basement space. And that's where we were looking at doing the 5-foot ADA compliant sidewalk here. We have a rooftop amenity space that's 7 at the existing. There's some existing mechanical rooms up there. So this is the original building, and this is an addition. It houses a lot of mechanical rooms. And we're taking the mechanical room off, and we're adding mechanical rooms about 400 and existing mechanical rooms 420 square feet, and we're proposing 769 square feet. Some of that includes an elevator. We don't have an elevator that meets all the levels, so the new elevator will provide access area throughout the building. And so we've got a net gain of 349 square feet.
You mentioned elevators. I had heard in a previous meeting that the existing elevators are not large enough for, say, a hospital or medical emergency gurney size or something. Is this new elevator is up to those standards that you were actually talking about, right?
Freight elevator, like a freight elevator.
The new one. It's stretcher size, and it's large, but it's hopefully not going to look like a freight elevator inside.
Can't hear you.
And that's sort of it on the building.
Any questions for the architect? I think this may be for staff, but related to with an existing building. Is there a need to look at materials? I know there's not many here, but I don't know.
That is a part of the HRC's review, how the existing materials will be treated and cleaned and fixed up. And then with the new addition, so that the part that you all would look at ordinarily would be new construction. With that new rooftop addition, that the Secretary of the Interior Standards have really specific guidelines for when you're putting a new addition on a historic building, as far as the materials that can be used, that they must appear different, has to clearly be a new addition and not made to look like it was there all along. So they do, the HRC review does include all of that materials review.
I have a question. I didn't see it, or if I did, I might have missed it. I've been having some computer issues. But does the sky bar remain, or does it go away in this new design? Am I allowed to ask that? I'm just curious as a...
We're not using the sky bar.
Would you mind flipping a few pages down so the public can see some of the renderings of the wider sidewalk? A60.
see this is the area where you're standing now. Currently the sidewalk is running right through here.
Thank you. And you mentioned a little bit of the rooftop screening and the equipment, and that is something under the design guidelines that we would review. However, because it's a historic project, they have already reviewed that. Understanding with HRC, they're actually going back to HRC one more time for a final on that screening, but you are
Right.
meeting the requirements.
Right. We're not sure exactly what the mechanical system's gonna be. There are two options, and each one will require different types.
But Jessica, I heard you say that like the marble and all that, that's already taken care of under, okay, just clear.
Okay, any other questions for the architect? Thank you. Any other questions for staff or anything before we go into a discussion and get into public comment?
I have a question, and this is regarding kind of just impacts to pedestrians on Battery Park. And Chris, this may be best for you, if you could pull up the site plan on the, and it's just regarding, in terms of impact to pedestrians and those existing street trees. And I know that this is probably something y'all discussed, maybe with the owner, maybe you've gotten some city staff input, maybe by the arborist, but at the top, it would be the northeast corner of the site, where you're doing that new bulb out. There's an existing tree there that's not really noted on the plan. If you look, if you go down one, go down to the existing conditions, there's the two benches there facing each other. There's the best tree on that street is right there. And I don't think it's gonna work out with your alignment, but that's just something to look at. It's a really nice sweet gum. But what I wanted to ask was I think it's two existing old sycamore that are, I think, really struggling, and they're well over, I think, the average lifespan of an urban tree. They're on the north face of a building, which means they've been struggling even that much more. This would be a really good opportunity. It's an opportunity to something that I think would really favorably impact pedestrians, to consider putting in a new high-quality tree, or just looking at their placement. It might allow you to kind of flex up that space a little bit and not having to live exactly where the existing ones are. But with the new trench drain going in close proximity to where those existing trees are, this just may be a good opportunity. I just wanted to bring that up.
I appreciate that. I kind of get ingrained into myself and my team's head, save all existing trees that have any potential of just being able to be saved. And but we do have a nice area there that we can make improvements, especially for trees that are.
Yeah, and Mark Foster may have a specific thought on this, but those things are old and they're very, they look old, and I think their time is up.
Appreciate that information.
Yeah.
Chris, while you're there,
Yes, ma'am.
maybe you can answer the question I had earlier. Are the travel lanes on Battery Park the width staying the same, or are they being reduced with your proposal?
So the proposal that we have right here, they get reduced by about 6 feet.
The travel width?
The travel width. Currently, there's one lane on Battery Park.
Yes.
It is one 26-foot wide lane. So what we've proposed there is to do a road diet to bring that into something more defined and similar to other streets in the central business district. We've shown a 20-foot cross section per our conversations with the transportation department, and that cross section was intended to help provide better definition out there, and also the opportunity, if the city desires, to change that to a two-way road.
I have a question for staff. Is it illegal to double park for a delivery vehicle?
No.
Is that a staff person?
I'm not sure.
I think they can be cited.
Yeah, they can be cited. It's not, I think it's pretty difficult for staff. I think they sometimes get calls about that, and by the time they get there, the truck's probably gone.
Yeah.
Difficult to.
I don't think that's going to just having this parallel parking, which I don't see a semi wanting to parallel park, I'm imagining we're still gonna get double parking delivery. And right now it works with the width of the street, you can still get by, but if there is any narrowing, I don't see how anyone, especially an emergency vehicle, will be able to get through.
So I think this is a great candidate for the next agenda item. So our grander recommendations to council regarding the impacts to the neighborhood and community as a result of this project that are unrelated to the design review.
So I do have something that may be related, but just
Okay.
check me if it needs to go in the other box.
Sure.
So maybe Chris or anyone else who wants to answer staff. So with the bump out, and the note that you mentioned about seeking off-site parking within the central business district, can you explain to me then, just in terms of design impact, if the loading zone could then be used for like valet, which then doesn't make the loading zone accessible for drop-off? And again, Sage, if I'm in the wrong bucket, it just seems very integrated.
The loading zone is confusing me because the design guidelines do refer to the loading zone, but as a portion of a UDO requirement and as a suggestion for how we handle a design review. If you have that document available, I suggest you pull it up. It's requirement number 3. And that's a UDO requirement, but it has some, looks like Andrew has a paper copy. Thank you.
I'll read that if you want.
I believe though that it is the loading zone, the loss of parking spaces, the width of the road, the bike lane, all those things are not part of the structure itself. They're not part of the
But
design.
they are in the design
But it
review
appears like
guidelines.
structure.
So in the guideline document, there's an area on each page that's grayed out, and it says requirement 3. Those are UDO items. And the reason we put them like that, for better or for worse, not really to confuse people, but just so that people could see what's required in the UDO and why it's not in the guidelines. If that makes sense.
It does.
So it is a UDO item. I don't believe there is a guideline related to loading.
So to clarify, council will review and decide whether or not that loading zone is permissible there. We will not vote particularly on that. However, in this next
And the
agenda
sidewalk,
item.
the sidewalk piece
Right.
as well, just
Right.
the physical structure.
Correct.
Okay.
However, when we get to the next agenda item, we can make a recommendation about how that should or should not be handled.
Thanks, Chris.
Good? Anybody else? Okay, so if you are, this is where we go to public comment. If you are a member of the public who wishes to speak on the design of this building, and I know that's gotten a little confusing in here, so you can ask. You have 3 minutes, come up one at a time, introduce yourself, make your statements, make room for the next person, okay?
And then you'll have time to talk about the parking issue.
Yes, so to be clear, once we are going to have this public comment section, then we are going to vote. We're going to put to rest the design review process. Then we will open a new agenda item, okay? And that will be for the more contextual things.
Hi, my name is Rick Shell. My wife and I own Pearl's Yarn Emporium on Wall Street. So I think this is relevant because we're talking about activating the doors and windows on the Wall Street side. Particularly, we've got at least one door there that is going to open onto what is admittedly not sidewalk, not in any way compliant. So it seems like that's a definite design issue. And it seems very irresponsible to say, okay, we think this should be approved, and we'll figure it out later. This is, if we kick that can down the road, it really limits what can be done on Wall Street. If you do decide, well, we need a sidewalk, an actual sidewalk there, then, and we've got a Wall Street businesses group that's been meeting for a couple of years now, and these are complicated issues, but if you just let this go on by and say, we'll figure it out later, you're picking winners and losers. You're saying, well, if we figure this out later and we have to push a sidewalk, then we're definitely going to take that parking away on the other side of Wall Street, and we're not going to let those restaurants have their bump out tables because, you know, this building was more important. It got there first. So it's irresponsible to say, well, you know, this developer has this plan, we'll figure it out later. No, you've got to this is when you figure it out. If there's no plan for Wall Street and those trees and the cobblestones and the parking across the street and the 12 feet of sidewalk, you know, that's not acceptable. This city has stopped being a rubber stamp for developers. They need to come in with a plan that works, not a plan that, well, maybe one day this will work. The default can't be, okay, we recommend this for approval. The default has to be, there's a plan, it's going to work, and then we recommend it for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And you are correct, that is particular to the design review process, that sidewalk. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Farrell Zaire, and I'm a resident at 21 Battery Park.
Can you get closer to the microphone?
Is it permissible to discuss the design of the loading zone under
In
this
the
section?
next group, if you could.
The design?
Yeah. Thank you. Because the design of the loading zone is not part of the building. So we're reviewing the design of the building. Abby?
Hi, I'm Abby Roach from the Buskers Collective here. We keep talking about the bump outs and about creating community space here, but this creates a lot of issues for street performers. This won't work for us whatsoever. The bump outs that are created in spots where our crowds actually don't really congregate. They actually congregate more in the street. We're going to be creating more and more traffic coming around that corner into the street that's already dangerous with near misses consistently. And now we're going to have our crowd in the street and the police are going to be called consistently because there's no space for our buskers anymore. We only have 2 spots with sidewalk space that are large enough for folks to have groups. Soon to be 3 once the museum's finished, if they work with us. But you know, this spot only works for us now because Wall Street is a mixed-use road, and so people are standing in that road. If it doesn't continue to be a mixed-use road, then our iconic busking spot is gone.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah.
Anyone else that would like to speak to design or is unsure if their concern is about design?
Hi, I'm Charlotte Stack. I'm the Director of Operations for Tri-County Restaurant Group. I just want to understand how the design affects our patio. I don't know if that is associated with the design conversation that we're having now and that sidewalk bump out.
The sidewalk is, okay, so.
I think you had a good
image
that sort of shows the 2 sidewalks. So,
if you could just speak as loudly as possible when you're away from the mic.
yeah, so you can see in the existing picture, the second bump out sort of up the street a little bit gets modified and changed here. So I just would like to understand sort of what our process would look like in
Okay, because
maintaining
your
that.
guidance
Yeah.
is the current bump out that goes away?
Yes.
Oh.
It shouldn't.
your site plan here shows. So right now, this is the current,
Okay.
where the current outdoor dining occurs, and this would actually enlarge that area more.
So it makes your area larger. It also, in this rendering, puts you adjacent to the loading area.
But it means they're gonna be constructing on it for months, probably.
Just like, if we can, really not speaking out into the room is going to be very helpful. Okay. Any other public comment related to? You
Just to
can
clarify
back up
one more
and
thing.
clarify, that's fine.
Would we need to go through an additional or secondary approval process to maintain, or it's just there the whole time? It can never be disrupted through construction?
The disruption is interesting.
Yeah. So part of how our sidewalk encroachments work is that they are renewed annually, and I think the city can, I think with 30 days notice for any outdoor use of sidewalks can take that back. Now, so maybe what you're speaking to more is the construction impact, maybe a bigger issue.
Right.
And so we're not really talking about that here.
Okay.
So that would be if it gets approved at council.
Okay.
Then we need to discuss,
Okay.
that impacts you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, commissioners, we are,
I have one more question just for maybe Jessica or Chris, I'm not sure. So it took me a while to get to this, but the egress and ingress for the new ADA compliant door in the basement that rolls out onto the tough terrain on Wall Street for differently abled people. Is the terrain that it goes out onto also factored into the ADA compliance?
The discussions that we've had with the applicant would be creating that ADA compliant surface from the door to the street, which is an ADA compliant surface that leads you to the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street that is an ADA compliant surface. So
Thank
it's
you.
just kind of a bump out of that cobble.
So I also have another comment. I found another section in the design guidelines, and this is not part of the video. This is recommendation 10A. It says that vehicular access, loading docks, and trash collection should be placed along a rear service alley if one is present. And so that is a recommendation. And to me, the issue with this project, I mean, I think they've done a great job with what they have to work with. But it's a difficult street because of, the traffic and the parking and the loading zones and the buskers. And I think that really is the fundamental issue from a design point of view, is that they haven't really fully addressed the access, the drop off. It's just gonna be a very congested area there. And I think that's not desirable from a design point of view.
in that recommendation, thank you for pointing that out, just say that it would be placed along the rear service alley if one is present. So, there is, and there's not one.
Well, the recommendation is there for a reason, though. It's to try to reduce congestion on some very congested streets. Anybody that walks around downtown on that street in particular, trucks are already double parking on that street today. I can guarantee you, if you walk over there, there's gonna be trucks double parked. And then you're gonna have people coming in and wanting to drop off at the hotel. It's just gonna be a very congested and potentially dangerous, area when that happens.
And I think again, that's the next agenda item. I know it's challenging, and it's extremely complicated because this is already a built building. We're not, so the sidewalk, the cobblestone, the lack of appropriate width, the ADA compliance, all of those things are within our scope to review and consider a vote based on. The loading zone, however, I do not believe is.
It does say loading dock.
The 10A, yeah. And I think, again, that's a recommendation when there's not an alley.
So we've been able to use that recommendation to the commission's benefit in other situations, such as 17 North Market Street, that renovation of that building, when that came through your review, there is an alley behind that building, and so when we're talking about access, vehicular access, as well as trash pickup, that was, because we have this recommendation in here, we were able to say, you've got an alley, you've got to use it.
Same with Parisian. No. Okay.
That's interesting. I'll let you go. Do that on the next one.
I don't know where I'm going. I think we're at a vote place.
Jessica, can you give me a clarifying direction? I don't want to go off in a ditch, so will you help me here? When you said loading dock and alley, and then you said trash pickup, so we're not judging or determining the increased traffic within a building that increases refuse or waste onto another economic development street. That has nothing to do with that.
Not for a design review.
Okay, but I can probably get it done on the next one.
The trash collection does remind me of something I had a question about, because we do review mechanical screening, which was addressed by HRC on the roof, but maybe I just didn't see it in the drawings. Where is the waste management and pickup for trash?
It's on the cobblestone on Wall Street. Takes up like.
Well, but in the proposed design.
Currently, the trash is rolled out on Wall Street for pickup, and that we maintain the
Okay,
existing.
so it's kept inside the building and rolled out, and then there's not a dumpster on the street that needs to be screened or anything like that in the proposed design?
There's not.
Okay.
The trash collection is proposed to maintain as the current building does.
Great, thank you. And just a couple more clarifying points. The requirement 6, landscaping the street trees that are existing, assuming that the cobblestone isn't replaced and stuff, they do meet the current requirement on wall and battery. Okay.
There's some new trees that may go in on Battery Park. Wall Street would remain as is.
But they did meet the requirement.
requirement.
Okay, great.
Does that, back to the trash thing, are we supposed to understand that the amount of trash produced by the building will remain the same?
Not on this side, I already asked it. We can go there on the other one.
Oh, it's a fun day here. Okay. I think we're at the place where we can hear a motion. Does anyone feel that they have a motion to make? No one wants to make a stab? Okay. There is a suggested motion. How about this, a nod from y'all about the sidewalk? Because it seems to me the motion is either to recommend approval or to recommend denial based on the Wall Street sidewalk. From my perspective, that is the only design component that has not been met at this stage. So, show of hands, who is concerned about the sidewalk on Wall Street? Well, shoot, okay. That leads me to believe that we're making a motion to deny based on the sidewalk and the pedestrian access and the ADA compliance and the non-conforming width on Wall Street. Is that what I'm sensing from the group? I didn't see hands down here, but I saw all the hands down here.
I'd like to consider opening it for further discussion.
So we'll discuss once we have a motion in a second. And at which point the developer could agree to come into compliance with the minimum 8 feet, I believe, right?
It's 12
Now
feet.
12 now?
So to comply, just to be clear, to comply with the standard would eliminate the travel lane, it would eliminate the tree, I mean, it wouldn't be possible. So and the parking and the use of the opposite side of the street. To comply would completely alter the use and the usability and the look of Wall Street. So it's not possible to recommend strict compliance.
But loose compliance of some form could be. And so everyone in the room is clear We are mandatory review, voluntary compliance board. So this commission will vote on this. The development will have the choice to continue to move forward or to listen and update according to our recommendations. The planning and zoning board will hear this next, and they have a strict requirement to hold these things to the UDO, as does City Council. So, if this board wishes to make a motion to deny based on the sidewalk with a recommendation that it is somehow a looser requirement of some ADA compliance, some walkway, pedestrian activity, we can do that. The developer can then proceed to the next board with how those more authoritative bodies wish to handle that.
Madam Chair, if I could just say, I know this is really hard for y'all, and ultimately, I think everybody in the room needs to understand that this vote is about design, it's not about the use. And your vote doesn't reflect your feelings about the use or the impact on downtown, period. Let's imagine this was your, somebody you know in the community, they're rehabbing this building for 100 micro businesses. That's your favorite project in the world. Would that change your vote on the design? I think ultimately, this is about design, not about what's happening in the building. It's hard to do it, but you gotta say, okay, we're gonna do integrity on this board, and we're gonna vote how we should on the design. I think, and I know we've been changing this, we're trying to get better and better at design review and have more integrity in our process. We've tried to do some training with this board, not a ton, probably not enough, it's not fair to you. But at the end of the day, does the design review vote, is it about design?
Well, and I heard Jessica, and I personally don't want to vote against the design. That's not, I want to come around on the other side because there's a lot of things that have not been considered, which make it sloppy, in my opinion. So, for the people, but design-wise, I think it's very clear. I think Jessica, you did an amazing job, and the staff in total of being clear about what we're looking at, and we asked questions accordingly. I do not personally want to vote against it, so I don't want to make that motion, because there's a lot of other factors. I think we need to make a 1,000 list of things that need to be considered.
I'm there with you, Kimberly, and I believe that the gentleman that spoke to, if we don't handle the sidewalk now, had some very valid points. I also believe the domino effect from that is more complicated than is expressed in any of these drawings. And sometimes there are situations where we have to do the best that we can with what we have, and particularly in preserving an historic building or a key street that is Wall Street, that was designed and is heralded as like a design dream in textbooks. I mean, I'm with you there. I'm trying to sense where everyone is, because I'm not hearing anyone make a motion, which means I'm going to be making the motion, and I'm not quite sure what the sentiment up here is. So what I think I'm going to do.
I'm happy to make the motion to approve.
Great. With any changes or just as is?
Based on the level of understanding I think I gained from Jessica's presentation, and all the notes and all the renderings and all the drawings and all the questions and answers, I don't have any modifications based on that. So I'm just making a motion to approve the project as it was presented, with the idea that we'll tear it up on the next slide.
Maybe don't include that in the motion.
Yeah.
Before we discuss, can we get a second, and then we'll move into the
Second.
I heard a second. Okay. Further discussion. Franzi.
And I think part of the concern is that this first discussion is going to hold more weight than the second discussion. The second discussion is not going to have a vote. Am I correct? It is. The second discussion will have a vote.
And it will have weight.
And it will have weight. And
because again, we are voluntary compliant. So regardless of how we vote right now, this project can continue to march forward. What we can do as a body who advises council on the overall impacts and economics and local economy and all of the usability of downtown, they listen. We will be sending a recommendation. I have a long list here of notes from everyone's input today. I think we will have quite a complicated, lengthy recommendation to them, which they will also weigh when they are weighing the loading zone, the parking, the valet, the loading, everything, the two-way traffic, all of that. So don't feel that if we vote yes on design, that is all council will hear from us. Is that address your concern? Okay, so we have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
1, 2, 3 nays, and we have a majority
Let's see
yea.
a hands for a minute.
Okay, nays.
Thanks.
Is that enough?
Yes.
Okay. We have concluded the design review portion of this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Now, we are going to enter what I believe is the part that most of you are here for. We're going to start by commission input, and then, well, how about this? Would you rather hear public input? Because we've had a lot of time to talk. Do you want to go to public input first? Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm Wyatt Stevens, and I'm a lawyer. I represent the development group.
If you're going to speak, do you mind coming up? I think we're about to open public comment, so let me just make this official. We've got 10:30. Public comment is opening, and this is our first commenter.
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to open it up because the developer has not had a chance to talk about the use, to talk about the vision, to talk about some of the concerns, because we understood that the first phase was understandably about the design. But clearly, this project has gathered a lot of comment, a lot of concern. We heard it in the vote just a moment ago. So what I'd like to do is bring Philip Wilkett up here. He is a principal of the Flatiron Preservation Group, the group that seeks to preserve this building through this historical reuse project. Now, Philip, like me, he's an Asheville native. He will tell you he grew up going to the Flatiron building with his father as a child. He lives in Charleston, South Carolina. He is an expert in historical reuse projects. He has been interested in doing a project in Asheville for years, and he identified the Flatiron as a particularly appropriate building and site and use for a boutique hotel. And what I'd like to do now is just bring Philip up here, tell you a little more about himself, what his plans are, and hopefully answer some of the questions that have legitimately been raised about this.
If I could interrupt 1 second. Thank you for being here, Philip. So what we're doing at this point is moving to public comment, and then we can come back for what sounds like more in-depth, beyond public comment, more than 3 minutes, is what I'm hearing.
If we could just have 5 minutes to start
So
that
that's
discussion.
outside the normal procedure, and I'm happy to grant that to you. At this point, we've moved to public comment, so we would like to hear from the public, and then we can circle back, and maybe that will help inform what you share with us anyways.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Okay, so public comment. Let me go over the rules again, because I will have a timer going. You can speak to anything you want about lodging use, this hotel, another hotel, impacts on your life, all of these things. This is about lodging use in downtown. It can be very specific to this hotel too. As you know, this commission is going to make a recommendation at the end of this conversation to council. So if you have input on what you would like for that recommendation to be, now is the time. You have 3 minutes. You must state your name clearly. It is a loud room, so please speak closely. Use the microphone. We've turned the volume up. And if you start to digress into things, well, actually, you can talk about whatever you want. But at 3 minutes, I have to cut you off. We do have a timer running somewhere. This one wasn't working. Okay. Let's go. Who's up?
Please state your name clearly.
Hey, I'm not vocal and I'm shy. I'm Jan Zaire. Excuse me a minute. I'm Jan Zaire. And you can't hear me? Louder.
It's for recording, so we really need you to use them.
Okay, I'm Jan Zaire, and I live in 21 Battery. We moved to Asheville within the last 2 years. Love it because of all the people on the street. What we see happening, I have a condo right overlooking the street. I don't know if this is going to work or not. You'll notice this is wintertime, and you'll notice that not only is it wintertime, but the trucks are already blocking the street. There is no place else for them to go. The more business we add to that street, including the hotel, the more delivery people you're going to have. That happens to be I forgot which truck it is, but the delivery trucks are not only there, but they're there in double space.
Speak into the mic, please.
Sure. We need to do something double parked in the street. Not only do we have, oh, wait. Not only do we have the commercial delivery trucks, we have remodeling trucks. That particular truck that you see, the white one, is not only an extended cab truck, it's an extended back end truck, and it hangs 6 feet over the length of the line that is allowed for parking there. You see the other cars are way up. That truck is full up, but it's also 6 feet beyond the line that's there. We're not allowing for enough space as it is to consider closing some of it off. The worst thing that can happen is that we lose some of that street space. The other problem, and I have another one here. This is a panoramic, so it's a little bit more difficult to see what's going on, but it goes from the Woolworths building down to Grove Arcade. You see that again, the trucks are just, I mean, they're all over everywhere in it. And I have another one that shows you another problem with the trucks. And that is, you see the ramp coming out the back end of that truck? Those food delivery trucks have ramps that go both on the side and on the back end because they have cold storage and they have frozen storage. So all of those trucks have 2 different ways of getting stuff out, and that ramp that comes off the side will come right out into the street. So I overlook a constant traffic jam in that block, and it's just, if anything, I would recommend giving it more space. In the summertime, we also have a lot of human traffic on those sidewalks, and we could use more space on that, and I understand we can't move the buildings away. I just think we need to be very careful how much parking space we give, more committed parking space, and that includes the restaurant.
Thank you so much. I collected your info. Who's up next?
Hey everybody, my name is Daniel Winker. I've been in Asheville a little bit over 5 years now. And I've been really blessed to be able to start my own massage studio on Wall Street. So I'm in the 12 and a half building. It's been really a beautiful experience to embrace entrepreneurship and figure out and learn all this stuff. I want to make sure that I have a great understanding of like the scope of this project and the timetable and the duration, because just as the one we just spoke, I don't see how construction in, on, around the Flatiron building is feasible for any period of time without like completely chokeholding that entire block radius. I know a lot of the other Wall Street businesses feel the same way. We have the same issue with loading areas and trucks. We sometimes have a line of cars just beeping down the road because there's trucks blocking the whole street. And I know Battery Park is just as bad. So I don't really feel, so far I know it was a little bit late today, but I don't really feel like I have an understanding of the scope of this project or how it's going to affect everybody in that area. So that's kind of the information that's missing for me at this point.
Great, thank you for that. And it's reminding me that throughout this process, as we listen to your public comments, we're actually not supposed to respond or answer. However, what I'm doing is taking notes so that we can answer you all at once at the end, if needed. Okay? Thank you. Who's next?
I just spoke. I just wanted to add a little bit. Abby Roach, Spoonley. With all this talk about street performance and how great this is for street performance and pedestrians and all that, which it's not and absolutely isn't at all. Just want to make it really, really clear that absolutely nobody from this project has talked to anybody from our street performers group or anything like that. No kind of contact, nothing. So, just want to add that.
Thank you, Abby.
Rick Shell, again from Pearl's Yarn Emporium. I have a lot of concerns because I love our tourists. You know, we're historically a tourist town. That's fine, but I hear more and more from locals that they don't come downtown anymore. They don't come downtown because of the traffic, because of the parking. Right now, the Flatiron building is is filled with offices, with practitioners, with local people. There are fewer and fewer places like that in downtown Asheville. We don't need more hotels downtown. We're already getting more and more. We do need places that bring locals downtown to work, to come to appointments, to come to eat. If we become just a tourist town, and I'm not surprised to hear the developer is from Charleston, South Carolina, because, you know, it's become a hollowed out chain store mall. We don't want Asheville to become that. We want to keep our flavor. That's what brings people here. If we just become another chain store haven, then we may as well all pack it up and go.
Thank you.
My name is Farrell Zaire. I'm a resident on the Battery Park. I'm concerned about the loading zone. In the drawings and the rendering, we saw that part of it is used by handicap space, and frankly, the whole space itself is not long enough to accommodate most of the delivery trucks that make deliveries on the street. I mean, most of the trucks are semis, and they wouldn't be able to get in and out of that loading zone. So we're going to have a reduced width of the street. We're going to have the same loading problems that we have because this loading zone will not accommodate most of the trucks. And I think with all of that combined, the additional traffic, we'll have serious safety issues with fire trucks and ambulances being blocked from getting through there. There's definitely going to be gridlock many times on the streets.
Thank you.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Faye Winsenange. I am a business owner in Asheville, and I'm also a resident downtown. I'd like the commission to consider the pollution aspect of this project. Either the light pollution, sound pollution, the trash pollution. As it is right now, there are a lot of rodents on the street. They pick up trash in the middle of the night or dumping bottles. So think about light pollution, sound pollution for the people who work downtown, live downtown. And the reason I want to address this is we have an instance several months ago. The hotel next door, Cambria, had somebody pressure washing the restaurant at 1:30 at night. So we woke up and called the police. The police did nothing. They say they have a permit. So I want you to just think about that, about the pollution aspect of it. And then we have restumping from the restaurants and all that stuff in our alleyway. So this is a lot to consider, just to think about adding 3 more. Besides the 80 rooms, the 3 more food producing to and then the light and the sound to everybody downtown. When everybody left, the people who live there, that they are the one who have to endure bottle dumping at 1:30, pressure washing at 1:30, trash pickup at those hours. I know we have rules, regulations, but they haven't seemed to be followed because I don't understand 1:30 pressure washing a restaurant is allowed. And the police told us that we have no right as residents to complain, because they have a permit. So that's the pollution aspect that I would like you guys to seriously consider before granting. And that's already a very congested area, including restaurants, business, and pedestrian. So adding those elements into that, think about the pollution aspect of this project. I like the preservation part of it. I am not against that at all. However, think about the pollution aspect of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Ramshaw, and I've been in Asheville for more than 50 years. And I hear a lot about people being very concerned that we're losing our downtown, that we're catering to visitors and not to locals. And I think it's easy and comfortable to blame the hotels because then we're off the hook. But I want to remind everybody that nobody comes to Asheville to stay in a hotel. There is no family sitting around their kitchen table thinking, oh my God, look at this hotel. Oh, it's awesome. Where is it? You know, people come to Asheville and they stay in hotels. Now, I personally love having visitors stay in our downtown hotels because then they're captive. They are shopping locally, they're eating locally, they're not going to chains, because if they have managed to get to the hotel and have their car put somewhere, they have realized you do not ever want to get back in that car until you're heading out of town. And the other people who come to Asheville who are not staying downtown are still coming downtown, and they're fighting with the rest of us for the inadequate parking that we have. Because I think the bigger issue is that we have not, as a city and as a community, planned for growth and created the infrastructure that we need for the explosion that has happened in my town since I arrived here in 1967. And the Flatiron is an iconic building. I want it preserved. It is a living expensive to preserve a historic building. Whether all the renovations happen today, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, this building is going to require a multi-million-dollar fix. At that point, we're just going to kick the can down the road. And this is a good group. They've got a lot of experience. They're going to do a great job to preserve this building for my grandkids. I know a lot of people are concerned about the small offices in the building. When this building is fixed, those offices are going to be more expensive. It's just the way the world works. And we actually do have a lot of office space available in downtown. These people are paying $19 to almost $40 a square foot. This is not cheap space, but they're small spaces. And I think that there are ways that perhaps we can ask that they work with some of the bigger office holders in the community to have groups from the Flatiron or groups from anywhere and have smaller offices, shared offices. I mean, I think that there are ways that we can work creatively to help ensure that we don't lose a lot of our small office folks. But I don't see them staying once there's a renovation. And I did meet with the developer. My big concern is what happens on the street. I do not want us to lose our authentic street experience. And I asked about making sure that we had independent local businesses, which they promised.
Thank you, Karen.
Hi, my name is Joe Nicosi, and I didn't want to comment on this, but I want to comment more about the process you all are trapped in, and this needs to be brought up as part of the conversation to go forward to make recommendations to City Council, that you're essentially taking one use out of downtown and made it special. And our downtown has actually had a lot of progressive policies put forward that rekindle this downtown to make it more unique and make it more revitalized. So to take and put parking into this just for this one use makes it more difficult for you all to have a conversation about it, and also what you're going through with it, how it's all broken down in pieces. So if there's one way to maybe step up, I mean, this community had 30 hotels in the downtown by 1930. There's a lot of hotels. This place has been a hotel tourism mecca since before the Civil War. Thomas Wolfe wrote about that in the Lacombe Angel. This is a use that's part of who we are. And to make it go through a more difficult process and not solve these other problems of making more real estate happen so we could have more office space, more retail space, more housing, we're essentially trapped into this is the only use that's coming in. And we're not solving the broader economic problems that we have in our city. So if there's one thing that you all could recommend to City Council is we need to have a better process than what's going to be all going through. So that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Alice Madura. I live downtown. What are we doing? Nobody's talking about any benefits. This is all a problem. Those of us who live downtown love it. Cannot believe I'm up here. Maybe when you all are talking, talk about what the benefits are, because it won't be a very long discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
May we respond?
Just 1 second, please.
Good afternoon. David
David Jones, William David Jones. I am in real estate and I am a server, so I do love tourists in town, but I'm also a family man. I've noticed there's no more affordable housing in Asheville. I've noticed that for a while. And while these office spaces are small, we have an office in the Flatiron Building, as in the 8th floor, my wife and I walk up the stairs to go and see what businesses are there. And they might be small, but according to the rest of the offices around, they're very affordable, and that's about it. I mean, parking alone, a year and a half to get a parking space. We park almost a mile away to walk there, and that's the best we can do right now. If you remove that, we're no longer a living city, it seems like to me, because tourists come. I'm a server also. We have to live somewhere, park somewhere, work somewhere. If all I have is a job, but I have to drive an hour to the job, I'm not going to keep that job. So you get people that come in from, they move around. There's different businesses that do that, and they're not even from Asheville. So you have a non-Asheville person serving food in Asheville for the 3 months, out of the year, and he goes somewhere else like Florida or wherever. I just feel like for my daughter, my wife, if we can work on those things, talking about like other opportunities, let's do that now, and then bring the hotels in. I've seen these hotels; they're not full. I know cash rules everything around me. I understand that, but we're paying taxes. Businesses pay taxes. Cream, right? Okay. But sales tax isn't the only tax. And if we do valet parking, is that bringing money to the city or just the hotel itself? Parking is expensive, but we pay it because being downtown is awesome. I just know that there's a lot of room out there for hotels, and there's already a lot of hotels in Asheville. That's all.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Landis and I live downtown. I think you've heard a lot about the big issues here, but there's one thing I still don't understand, which is how does the drop-off and the pickup of guests work? Where does that happen? We're talking about a loading zone where guests could potentially be dropped off with their automobiles. But if the loading zone is not exclusive to the hotel, it's being used by some other
Double park trucks.
whatever, where do guests get dropped off? In the middle of the street? And are we talking about more congestion that's caused because there's no place set aside specifically for that to happen? And I realize that's just a very specific, small area, but it's something I think could be a major concern to people who live or who walk on Battery Park or on Wall Street. Thanks.
Thank you.
Michael Lusick, I oversee some of the businesses down in the same area. To add on to that, you also had, there's no parking on site. There's 25 to 50 cars running around the city trying to find parking at the same time. I'd also encourage the council, either here or the next design, to look at to scale site plan of the sidewalk with the outside seating to see if you've really added a significant amount of sidewalk space or just significant dining space outside.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Larry Golson, and I run a Division Eye Care on Charlotte Street as well as an optical shop in the Flatiron Building. And I, as a business owner and property owner of commercial space, feel that anybody that owns space in Asheville or anywhere should have the opportunity to sell it if they want to. I also feel like when I listen to the colleagues and peers going through the building at the Flatiron, and just public kind of comments in general, I hear a lot of, I guess, animosity towards hotels and the idea of more hotels. And I'm wondering if there's some way to have like a mixed-use building, because I think that the Flatiron Building needs obvious updates. It's an old building. It's been there for a long time. And I also feel like, there's maybe some sort of common ground or compromise that can be achieved that might satisfy a lot of people and be something that, locals could get behind as well as, the tourists there.
concerns are, well, I agree pretty much with what Karen Ramshaw said, so I'm not gonna repeat all that, but I think that the parking issue has been totally unrealistic. I don't know where these random 40 spaces or 50 spaces are gonna come from. I think using the parking decks at night is fine, but that doesn't address anything about parking during the day. I think also the working staff, I don't think that anybody is addressing where those people are gonna park and how they're gonna get to work and what it's gonna cost them. The other thing I'm concerned about is waste management. Obviously, this building is gonna create a lot more waste, and I don't have confidence that it's gonna be able to be stored inside. So I'm worried about how that's gonna be managed on Wall Street. And just the general traffic flow, which is already now, as everyone else has pointed out, very congested with delivery trucks and people trying to park.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Okay, what I'm gathering from the attorney and developer was that they wish to make a longer statement that is not a public comment. So does this commission wish to hear from the developer on these matters and potentially ask them questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we amending the agenda? Is that what we're doing? Because I was gonna bring up a point of order about presentations being made in.
It's a good point.
It's
So,
an agenda item, we can handle it.
yeah, I mean, it's a good point, because what's happening here, we're not trying to be rude, is that we just don't have a procedure for what we're trying to insert at the end. So we could have a point of order and add an agenda item for a presentation from the development team, which I think would be limited to 10 minutes.
And they also could have done that during the design review as a part of what we usually allow for the development team to do, but they were trying to respect the separation between design and impact.
That's fine, I think we're more than happy to hear from them. So I make a motion to add an agenda item for the development team to respond to some of these concerns and make an up to 10-minute presentation. Can I get a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Andrew, for that point of order.
I am opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry, any opposed? Andrew is opposed.
Thank you.
Please come up.
Bill?
I'm sorry.
Can you get the timer?
Sure. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you.
And you'll get to do this several more times, and after this, I will speak to the concern about the timeline of the project.
It's still good morning. My name is Philip Wolcott. I am a native of Asheville. My grandfather moved the family here in 1930 and was in an entrepreneurial spirit when he did partners in the Great Depression and thought it was a good idea, opportunity for the community of Asheville to start a local bank, the original Bank of Asheville. So my family's had roots deep here in Asheville. Growing up, I remember visiting the Flatiron as a child with my father. He got his hair cut at the barber shop on the first level of the Flatiron building. At an early age, I became very interested in historic buildings, how they were designed, how they were built, and the important role they played in their respective communities. I moved to Charleston, South Carolina after college to begin my career in real estate. It was at that time I was introduced to the historic restoration, in particular, adaptive reuse. How to give an old building new life while preserving its original purpose, continuing to be a tribute to the city's history and culture. For the past 20 years, I've been learning my craft in historic renovation, specializing in adaptive reuse in a city that has been at the forefront of historic preservation, that city of Charleston. They have been dealing with very similar issues that the city of Asheville is dealing with, and I am bringing that knowledge and expertise with my team to Asheville in pursuit of preserving this iconic historic structure. As mentioned earlier, I've been looking for just the right building here in my hometown, and when the Flatiron opportunity presented itself a little over a year ago, I immediately drove to Asheville and met with the owner, Russell Thomas. During the tour of the property, I quickly realized Russell's passion for the building and that we both shared the vision of first and foremost preserving this iconic downtown structure. For 34 years, the building has enjoyed the stewardship of Russell's hard work and love. But after 93 years, the building is at a difficult crossroads. It is in need of substantial capital repairs and improvements. It has become functionally obsolescent. It needs help. My team is here to join Russell with that help. We have got experience in adaptive reuse. We have got capital that wants to be put to use. We have got a great local Asheville team prepared to embark on this endeavor. Jeff Dalton with Row House has extensive historic preservation experience here in Asheville, including my second favorite building, Row Arcade. We've got Chris Day and his team at CBC, and we've also got Wyatt and his legal expertise to guide us through this process here in the city of Asheville. Also, as mentioned earlier, we're working under the strict guidelines of the National Park Service, which I have got years of experience in working under, as well as do all my team members. In looking at the Flatiron Building, what it has been for the last 90 plus years as an office building with retail on the ground floor, our team took many months to analyze the various uses that could be kept in the building going forward that would not only provide the economic return to pay for the capital improvements to the building, which are in the millions, but also to give it a business model that would maintain itself, provide the stability for it to sustain itself for generations to come. The Flatiron Preservation Group looks at this as a legacy asset. We want to be good stewards of the property, just like Russell and his partners have for the last 34 years. Russell, the current owner, has brought this up in previous meetings regarding the Flatiron Building. It's half of a building. It's this very intriguing triangle shape, but that does prevent some very strict some space constraints. Obviously, 90-some years ago, when it was built to be an office building with retail on the ground floor, that worked. But in today's markets, it is very inefficient. Out of close to 50,000 square feet of the building, only about 26,000 square feet is rentable. So you've got quite a bit of common space that is non-revenue generating, and therefore makes it very difficult to continue as an office use.
Point of clarification, is that statement you just made based on your business model? Your projected performance?
I'm sorry, performa.
So the statement you just made is that there's a high percentage of square footage that is not functional to create a revenue model that works. Is that for your revenue model?
No, the hospitality actually can utilize all of this half of the building that is unable to be utilized as an office use.
Got it.
Included in that square footage is an entire basement of the building, which is unable to be utilized as office space, and we're looking to activate that space. Addressing the substantial capital improvements, we have several initial items that need to be addressed. Life safety. The building is unsprinkled, which obviously in an 8-story building raises a lot of red flags and concerns. Also, that was brought up earlier, lack of an ADA compliant elevator. Our restoration process will completely renovate and keep the 2 existing historic elevators in operation, but we'll also add a 3rd elevator that will be ADA compliant. Going back to analyzing it, we looked at office space because of the common factor, unusable square footage that you're unable to generate rent on. It does not work to continue this building as an office building due to the current configuration of the building, which we can't change. It's condos. Again, the functional obsolescence shape of the building, the common areas, it doesn't lay out well for a residential use. Our team too is first and foremost restoring this building to its original glory, but for it to be activated and continue to be used by the local Asheville community. Turning it into a residential condo building based on renovation numbers, to make the numbers remotely feasible, you would have to charge exorbitant high-end prices for these condos, which would probably need to be second or third condos for folks that wouldn't be here year-round. So the building, for the most part, would remain dark. And there would be no access for the public. It would be a private condo building. So our use is proposing street level. We're going to keep 2 retail bays for local Asheville businesses. We're going to incorporate a lobby and restaurant, locally owned to keep the street level access, activated. We're looking to do a very exciting rooftop bar, expanding on the beautiful views up there, as well as activate the basement area I was discussing into a speakeasy. As we embarked on this journey almost a year ago, we certainly knew the sensitivity of the current small businesses tenants. Russell has been a great landlord over beyond most with being a good caretaker for these businesses and providing them space for their endeavors. But the Flatiron is again at these critical crossroads where it is no longer going to be able to continue under that business model. So we reached out to the tenants early on and have negotiated and put together a very attractive tenant relocation package. We've been working with Dewey Property Advisors, a local, well-respected commercial real estate firm here in Asheville, to help assist these tenants with finding other office space. Based on the information that we have gotten from Dewey Property Advisors, there's almost in excess of 100,000 square feet of office available today in the city of Asheville. And as Karen pointed out earlier, a lot of that space is actually more affordable than what a lot of these tenants are paying in the Flatiron building today. Another concern.
Clarifying point, you said the city of Asheville, not the Central Business District, correct?
The city of Asheville, correct. Another point is almost all of the tenants today in the Flatiron building are month-to-month, which, as stated in their lease, landlord can give notice. In 30 days, they've got to find another space. Realizing, again, the sensitivity of these local businesses, we wanted to extend to them a generous relocation package, which not only included aligning them with Dewey Property Advisors to help locate suitable space, but also to compensate them with a 6-month rent compensation. So if they had been paying $500 a month in rent, their relocation payment would be $3,000. The other thing is we are obviously sensitive to the timeline. This is, as reported earlier in the year, with the project had already closed, we were moving forward, and we wanted to make sure these tenants knew that.
Thank you both for being here and willing to speak there at the end.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're at the point where we've heard from the public and we need to sort through our recommendation to council. I've been doing my best to keep notes throughout this process, and perhaps to start, I could read to you what some of the notes I've collected are. Would that help? Okay, so take notes on what I haven't mentioned that's on your list. To the point, the woman who said let's speak to the benefits, I think there is an obvious benefit here that we are preserving an iconic historic building in our downtown. That I do see as a benefit, but they have been able to maintain the historic component. I have recorded that the loss, this is my personal, this has been said, I think the loss of 80 small businesses in downtown is a dire impact to downtown and does not tie into the new comprehensive plan's goal of a balanced